Welcome to our Black History podcast. My name is Aiden Mays. We have Rizo Huntley, and we also have Max Gilsdorf. Today we're going to be talking about three major people in the black community, or was in the black community. First off, we have MLK, or Martin Luther King Jr. Second, we have Frederick Douglass. And third, we have Harriet Tubman. So these people, they definitely changed black history in many good ways. And we have an introduction that we like to read to you guys. Overall, MLK, Frederick Douglass, and Harriet Tubman changed black history in many ways. To start, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and MLK all had a start to their lives that would change them to who they were then. For example, when Frederick Douglass learned how to read and write from local white children. Furthermore, Harriet Tubman led enslaved people through the Underground Railroads to the free land, or the North. As a result of Harriet Tubman leading slaves through the Underground Railroads, this enraged the Southerners to capture the enslaved people from the North and bring them back to the South. Finally, MLK led the March on Washington for jobs and freedom to the Washington Monument, which is where he had the speech, "I Have a Dream" speech, which is probably the most famous speech out of black history. That was in 1963. This led to the abolishment of segregation. To conclude, all of these people changed black history by freeing African Americans and giving black people their right to equality. All right, now we're going to start off to the early life of these people, starting off with Frederick Douglass. Okay. Frederick Douglass's early life was filled with hardship and learning experiences that shaped him into a powerful voice for freedom. To begin, he was born into slavery in Maryland around 1818, and as a result, Frederick Douglass's early life was filled with hardship and learning experiences that shaped him into a powerful voice for freedom. In addition, Douglass was denied for formal education because enslaved people were not allowed to learn to read or write. Consequently, he secretly studied whenever he could, determined to gain knowledge. Furthermore, he experienced harsh treatment under several slaveholders, and because of this, he developed a deep understanding for injustice of slavery. In conclusion, these early struggles helped shape Frederick Douglass into the courageous leader and abolitionist he later became. He grew up without the comfort of a stable family. That was very, very bad. And because of this, he developed a deep understanding of the injustice of slavery. In conclusion, these early struggles helped shape Frederick Douglass into the courageous leader and abolitionist he became later.
Thank you, Aiden.
Thank you.
Okay, so in Harriet Tubman's early life, she was marked as a hardship and strength that shaped her into a courageous leader to begin with. She was born around 1822 in Dorchester Country, Maryland, into slavery in harsh conditions. As a result, she learned resilience from a very young age. In addition, Harriet Tubman endured severe treatment, including injuries from being beaten and overworked. And consequently, these experiences fueled her determination to seek freedom. Furthermore, she grew up deeply connected to her family and community, even though enslaved families were often torn apart. And because of this, she developed a very powerful sense of loyalty and purpose. In conclusion, Harriet Tubman's challenges in her early years helped her form the bravery and compassion that defined her later life's missions.
Great job, Max. So now for Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s early life laid the foundation for his future as a civil rights leader. To begin, he was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, into a family deeply rooted in faith and community leadership. And as a result, he grew up surrounded by strong examples of service. In addition, King experienced segregation firsthand throughout his childhood, and consequently, these early encounters shaped his understanding of racial injustice. Furthermore, he developed a passion for learning at a young age. excelling in school and skipping several grades. And because of this, he entered Morehouse College at just 15 years old. In summary, Martin Luther King Jr.'s early experiences played a crucial role in shaping the value and vision that would define his legacy.
Very good, Rizo. All right, next, we're going to be talking about their successes. So, like the I Have a Dream speech of how many people were at the speech in the Washington Monument. So, here we go. So, starting off with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass has achieved remarkable successes that transformed both his own life and the course of American history. To begin, Douglass rose from enslavement to become one of the most powerful voices, and as a result, his speeches inspired thousands to join the fight against slavery. In addition, he became a celebrated author whose autobiographies exposed the brutal realities of slavery. And furthermore, his writings helped shift public opinion toward supporting emancipation. Finally, Douglass influenced national policy by advising presidents and advocating for the rights of Black Americans. And in turn, his leadership helped shape the nation's progress toward equality. Ultimately, Douglass's many accomplishments left a lasting legacy that continues to influence the struggle for justice today.
Thank you, Aiden.
No problem.
Harriet Tubman achieved many remarkable successes throughout her life that helped her shape the American history. First, one of her greatest accomplishments was her courageous escape from slavery in 1849. As a result, this bold decision showed her determination to claim her own freedom despite the enormous risks. Next, another major success was her
Extraordinary.
Thank you, Aiden. Work on the Underground Railroad, where she guided about slavery people to freedom. Because of this, her bravery was careful. Planning allowed her to complete every rescue mission without losing a single passenger. Finally, Harriet Tubman also made significant contributions during the Civil War by serving as a nurse, a scout, and even a military raid. In fact, her leadership in the Combine River, she helped free more than 700 enslaved people in one night. In conclusion, Harriet Tubman's achievements during these times showed that her courageous created a powerful legacy in the freedom of justice.
Okay, thank you, Max. So next for Martin Luther King Jr.'s successes. Martin Luther King Jr. achieved numerous successes throughout his life that transformed the civil rights movement in American society. First, he successfully led the Montgomery bus boycott, and as a result, his leadership helped end bus segregation and elevate him as a national figure for justice. Next, King delivered powerful speeches, most infamously the I Have a Dream speech, which inspired millions, and furthermore, these speeches strengthened public support for racial equality. Finally, his commitment to nonviolent protests helped him lead to major legislation such as the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And in addition, these victories established lasting legal protections for African Americans. In conclusion, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s achievements continue to influence the ongoing fight for equality, leaving a legacy that still shapes the world today.
Thank you, Rizo.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, we're going to be talking about major accomplishments for these very important people. So to start off, we have Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass achieved many significant accomplishments that established him as one of the most influential leaders in American history. To begin, he became a powerful abolitionist speaker after escaping slavery, delivering speeches that challenged the nation's conscience, and as a result, he quickly rose to prominence as a leading voice against slavery. In addition, he published several autobiographies, starting with our textbook, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, in 1845, which exposed the brutal realities of slavery and consequently, his writings inspired thousands to join the abolition movement. Furthermore, he worked for equality beyond abolition and advocating for women's rights, recruiting black soldiers during the Civil War, and serving in several government roles. And because of this, he helped shape national progress long after slavery ended. In conclusion, Frederick Douglass's powerful words, brave actions, and lifelong dedication to justice left a lasting legacy for freedom and equality.
Alright, moving forward, Harriet Tubman accomplished extraordinary feats that made her one of the most influential figures in American history. To begin with, she bravely led more than 70 enslaved people to freedom through the Underground Railroad. As a result, she became known as Moses of one of her people for her unmatched courage and leadership. In addition to that, Tubman served the Union Army during the Civil War as a nurse, scout, spy, and frequently she became the first woman in U.S. history to lead an armed military operation when she guided the Comanche River Raid. Furthermore, she spent her years fighting for women's voting rights and supporting formerly enslaved people, and because of this, she contributed shaping the nation long after the war ended. In conclusion, Tubman's heroic acts, lifelong service, and unwavering dedication for justice ensured her legacy as a true American icon.
Thank you, Max. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s achieved several major accomplishments that made him a defining leader of the civil rights movement. To begin, he led the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 after Rosa Parks' arrest, and as a result, the protests ended segregation on public buses and launched King into national leadership. In addition, he guided nonviolent marches and demonstrations across the country, including the 1963 March on Washington, and consequently, his efforts helped him inspire the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Furthermore, King continued pushing for justice through campaigns focused on voting rights, poverty, and fair housing. And because of this, his work played a key role in passing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. In conclusion, Martin Luther King Jr.'s powerful leadership and tireless activism created lasting change that transforms the fight for equality in America.
Thank you, Riza. All right, next we're going to be talking about some text evidence from our HMH into Literature textbook. So, to start off, Frederick Douglass. Overall, Frederick Douglass did not know many things, like not knowing how to read or write. He claims that his enslaver's wife was his teacher for learning to read and write. In the HMH into Literature textbook, on page 267, line 1, it states, "I had no regular teacher. My mistress, who had kindly commenced to instruct me, had in compliance with the advice for direction of her husband." This states how he had his enslaver's wife as a teacher, and apparently she got really mad.
Good job, Aiden. So,
Thank you.
in our textbook, the story, Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad, she did several things to keep her slaves moving forward so that they wouldn't get left behind. So it states, "I pulled the gun from my pocket, pointed it at the man trying to leave.
That did actually happen.
If you turn away, you die." They all froze, and the man reluctantly turned back and continued walking with us for the rest of the journey. Even when I had fallen asleep, the slaves did not try to disarm me and kept trusting me.
Great job, Max.
Great job.
So, for the text evidence from the HMH into Literature book, for Dr. King, injustice, or the quotes are, "Injustice anywhere is threat to justice everywhere." The next quote is, "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the staircase." Next, "Our lives begin to and the day we become silent about the things that matter. And finally, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can.
It's very nice. All right, now, thankfully, Max has a pretty big conclusion to read for you guys. Go ahead, Max.
Okay, thank you, Aiden. During the 1900s, three people, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had changed the world in several ways. Most importantly, Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad, the man who stood in the doorway, looked at her coldly with unconcealed astronaut
Astonishment.
thank you, Rizzo. Fear, and at the 11th, the several disheveled runaways who standing near her. Then he shouted, too many, it's not safe, my place has been searched last week, it's not safe, and slammed the door in her face. She had never been to Canada. The route was beyond Philadelphia, was strange to her, but she could not let the runaways who accomplished her know this. As they walked along, she told them stories of her own first flight. She kept painting vivid word pictures of what it would be like to be free. One of the runaways said again, let me go back, let me go back. I stood still and then turned around once over his shoulder. I am going back. She lifted the gun, aimed it at the desperate slave. She said, go on or die. In a husky, low-pitched voice was grim. On page 303 of our textbook. This shows during 1900s, Harriet Tubman changed the world because it showed her bravery and her willing to keep slaves moving forward while putting her own life at risk so she could bring them all safe to freedom. Next, the second most important part of this was Frederick Douglass and the narrative life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, states, I plan which I adopt and the one by which I was most successful at was that making friends of all little white boys whom I met in the street. As many of these I could refer into teachers. With their kindly aid, I obtained different times and different places I could be successful in learning to read. When I was sent off my earnings, I always took a book with me, and by going one apart my earn quickly, I found time to get a lesson in before my return. The deduction of slavery and a powerful vindication of human rights. The reading of these documents enabled me to utter my thoughts and meet the arguments brought forward to sustain slavery, but while they were relieved to one difficulty, they brought on another even more painful than the one which I was relieved. The more I read, the more I was led to ever my detest my enslavers. I could regard them in no other light than band of successful robbers who had left their homes and gone to Africa and stolen us from our homes. So this part right here shows that during Douglas's time, he had taught several people, so then he could then spread his teachings to other people in several places at once in different times. He didn't know what he was doing, but he had sacrificed his own partial humanity for the others, leading him down a rabbit hole he would never be able to escape, proving that he was one of the greatest, willing to sacrifice his own mind to teach others about slavery and the wrongness of it. Alright, so the final, most importantly, was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The text states, from this point onward, King's life was bound up with Southern nonviolent movement. Its driving force was the highlighted confidence of thousands of blacks and their white supporters. But King was its symbol and spokesperson. He suffered greatly in the process in 1958 while promoting his first book, Stride Forward Freedom. An account of the name Montgomery boycott. He was stabbed by a black woman. He was frequently arrested and rotated by detractors as an outside
Agitator.
agitator, as he led various campaigns across the South, and he was the author of 5 major books and hundreds of articles and speeches. His principal accomplishment of to raise the hopes of black Americans and to bind them with an effective directed action campaigns. Although he was the major spokesperson of the civil rights movement, he was the modest about his contributions. Just before his death, he declared in the sermon that he wanted to be remembered as a drum major for justice in paragraph 18 of my Info Ohio article. This shows during 1900s, Luther changed a lot of people's insight in what he was willing to sacrifice to give speeches about blacks and how everybody should be treated equally as one and the same. Overall, during these times, the 3 people, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and Martin Luther King Jr., changed the world by pulling people out of slavery, teaching people of movements of freeing slaves, and showing equality to everyone, to show that everyone is equal the same and no one is other.
All right. Thank you for listening, guys. I thought that went well. I don't know about you guys, but
Yes.
thank you guys for tuning in, and see you next time. Thank you.
Campbell is never gonna beat me in November. Donna's gonna make the country better than you can remember. Campbell is never gonna beat me in November. Hey, Macarena. Campbell is never gonna beat me in November. Donna's gonna make the country better than